All right, well, good morning, everyone. Get started. Most of you, I'm assuming, are happy last week or last few days. Yep.
It's that same look of, I don't know.
So if you want to take a look at the agenda, I'll blow it up a little bit here. Yeah, just get a feel for today. As usual, but we'll just start with a little agenda and some updates, and then we're going to have Karen and I kind of talking about some travel procedures and non-negotiables. So we've been having a little trouble getting people to do their approvals on time, and so we're going to put some structures into place to support you and give you some clarity around what needs to be done, with also saying you have a certain time period to get it done. If you don't get it done, your trip may be in jeopardy because we're holding out other people's travel sometimes. So we'll kind of work through kind of a planning sheet for travel, and then Supplemental Standards Committee. I took the Supplemental Standards conversation to the board, which will affect many of you. I just want to kind of give you an update of what that is. Then we'll move into some policy review around work hours. It's been a while since we've done a policy, so we're going to do that one as we head into the new year. And then we'll do a piece on cognitive science, and I don't see handouts from Karen, so let me text her if we have some actual paper today.
Totally slow.
A little bit of this 10-2 rule. Then we'll move into Jeannie's presentation on kind of gathering a needs assessment around the professional learning standards, or foundation standards. And then standards revision. I'll give you, I just want to do a status check to see where we are, what groups need to finish so that we can start planning peer review to kind of wrap that project up. So they want to persist too much longer, so I'm hoping we're close. And then you'll have about 45 minutes today to work on your action plans to achieve your UPM goals around your professional learning. And so I'll give you some time with your teams or individually for those of you that are on your own to work on that. The action plan will be due January 10th. So the intent is that you clearly define your plan to achieve your goals together. I haven't really seen anyone asking other than my research team of what they might want to do. So the rest of you, this is kind of your opportunity to set that stage to get that work done because it is mid-year and you only have about 4 or 5 months left to get that goal achieved. So I want to make sure you are setting yourselves up for success by giving you a little planning time today. Questions about the agenda? All right, general updates. David's going away party is today. Where is he? There he is. 1 week from today is it, right?
That's right, and then we'll just go away.
This is no way. We have to call the going away party not a retirement party because David's already retired. This is like, he spent a decade here beyond retirement, which is awesome. But so it's a going away party later today. And that reminds me, I forgot my part, so I will run home and get that.
I was only retired for 24 hours
Right.
the first time.
And you came, yeah, we didn't have the year off in between that other
Right.
people have to do that.
Right.
24 hours, so you have 1 day. Legislative asks, they did do some prioritization in board meeting. They weren't planning on doing it, but when the governor decided not to come out with his budget in December, the board decided they might as well do something. So they prioritized growth and enrollment, so WPU and enrollment percentages. And then number 3 was transportation. It's really from a perspective of it's an unfunded mandate that you have to transport kids to school, but there's not enough funding to do it. So they prioritized that as number 3. Optional enhanced kindergarten is number 4. Which we're trying to push for just early learning to be prioritized as a whole kind of block grant. So I think we'll see if that one shifts next time. And then the school leadership project they decided to prioritize. There was some mixed agreement on the school leadership, and they did it really quickly. There was no discussion. It was just like somebody threw one up, and they're like, sure, sounds good. So I anticipate we'll have a more broad discussion in January. Robert?
Does the board ever, like under the transportation line item, do they ever also say, and we'd like cleaner buses, or we'd like to
They
provide?
could, but
They never do.
They don't. I mean, unless it's in our, so transportation, I'm assuming was somebody's business case, or at least somehow came up as an item. So unless that like staff member says, how about this? I doubt they probably get to that level. Thank you. We'll just send the sign-in sheet around, and then there are handouts with my messy water law. And thank you. All
So
right.
I'm sorry, the school leadership piece, can you tell me what that means?
Sure, so there's kind of 3 parts in it. The main idea is to provide mentoring for new principals within their LEAs or they're working. Another is kind of like a pipeline builder, so they had an advisory council that task force that came up with like 13 recommendations. One of them was like, hey, we have a principal shortage. Not true. We have a principal shortage in some rural areas, but not really a shortage in the state. We actually have hundreds, if not 1,000 or more principals that don't have jobs, that have an admin degree but aren't working as a principal. So it's not so much a shortage in that way, but it's more in the rural areas. David, do you want to add? Those are the 2 big pieces for me.
Right, so 15 million to the districts for professional development for principals, mainly, as you said, in mentoring, because that's a huge deal in all of our districts. $3 million for a scholarship program similar to THL for entering into administrative preparation programs. And in spite of the fact that we have this glut of people who have degrees, the issue is qualified candidates and making sure that the principal pipeline is leading to people who are actually going to be able to get jobs as principals.
Yeah, so we've got people out there that they're probably never going to be one even they have a degree. And so I was meeting with the United Way group on Friday, and they're focusing on turnaround leadership. And one of the things that I'm most looking at is they want competencies for higher education to have to teach for educational leadership, and then potentially an endorsement for those that are going to go into turnaround schools. So you have this kind of strategic statewide, here are the competencies for higher education, programs, and then some additional learning for those that are going to be in turnaround schools. Because a lot of principals are not prepared for the turnaround experience, or schools that are in need of improvement. And given we have only 5%, it seems little, but then you throw in the TSI or the CSI schools and you're at 400 additional schools, like that's a lot of principals in need of kind of understanding greater levels of improvement. So lots happening in the leadership space. It does have another FTE allotted for the agency if that bill passes to kind of help facilitate the leadership, which would partner with Lisa at that time if that were to occur. So that is the other one that's kind of a big, at least it's on the top 5 for now. They will rank order all of them in January. The delay in the governor's budget is tax reform. He's not willing to come out with his budget until tax reform goes through, so we probably won't see a budget ever at this point. So we'll see. I don't know. Tax reform has been quite the piece. If the way it's written right now goes through, we lose $160 million for education. So it's not a great win for education right now.
Didn't they already pass it, Jennifer?
Well, it's probably not going to actually pass. They'll come with a new bill in legislative season.
I see.
They took that one as kind of like, we need something, but it won't be the one that lands, I don't think. Okay, so if you haven't paid attention to tax reform, you know. So, all right. There was something I was thinking I needed to tell you when I was starting these slides. Maybe it'll come. Oh, in future staff and specialist meetings, I've decided, I kind of walked in and just did everything in terms of like staff and specialists, just everybody coming. I'm going to be a little more strategic about who comes, especially to staff meetings. So as specialists, some of your assistants don't need to be coming and sitting to things that don't apply to them. And so I'm trying to be a little more thoughtful about who attends what and when and all of those things. So I'll either be really explicit in an email saying you should come or you do not need to come. People are always welcome to come, but I don't want to waste people's time either. So if there's something in a meeting that doesn't apply, I'm going to try and get better in the new year of saying, during this portion of the day, these folks should be here. During this portion of the day, these folks should be here. So it's really clear even for yourselves of when it might make sense to not attend a portion of the meeting. In the past, staff meeting was kind of a way for everyone to be in the same room and unify licensing and the teaching and learning side or the curriculum side. But at this point, we don't really need to have meetings for the sake of that anymore. I think we're past that need for just being in the same room for unity sake. And if we have issues as we transform into trying something different, we can revisit. But that's kind of where I'm headed. Any concerns about that while you all are here and kind of hearing it for the first time? Be a little more thoughtful. So like my research team, sometimes it's great for you to come, sometimes it's not. I just think there's enough work in this agency that we need to be thoughtful about when we're in a meeting and if there's purpose to that attendance in that meeting. So I'll be working a little bit more on that as we start kind of getting into that space. If you'll help me by giving me feedback around, you could have said that differently so that people didn't feel offended that they weren't invited or something like that. I do want to be thoughtful, like anyone's welcome, but there's not enough time in this place to get everything done, so there's no need in wasting it sitting in a meeting going, I don't need to be here right now. So that is my initial thought. Robert?
Pretty radical thinking.
We'll see how it goes. If you have concerns and you don't feel comfortable addressing them here, please just stop by and talk to me. I've been giving this a lot of thought. It wasn't like an abrupt decision. Having been in this job for just a short amount of time, I'm trying to be really thoughtful about not just doing things the way they've been done because that's how they've been done, but really what's the point of people coming and sitting and thinking, she doesn't get that I don't need to be here, to me is not very thoughtful either. So I'm just trying to figure out where that kind of stands. So feel free if you have feedback to send that my way in whatever way you feel comfortable. Hopefully at this point you are getting a little more like, okay, I can tell her my thoughts and she's not going to get angry or hold it against me at this point. So, all right, we're going to move on to out-of-state travel with Karen.
Excel made it. So.
In your Google Drive, there is a document that Karen created that looks like this with the green and red at the top. If you want to pull that up so you have reference to what she's going to discuss, and then I will get to that.
I hope I picked the right thing.
It has no arrows anymore.
So this is in response to a table that was unexpected.
And let me just lay you out for success. Intent of Karen's presentation is I received feedback from finance that we're not very timely in some of our responses, and then that causes urgency as well as people being held up. So when you don't turn in your travel and you're traveling with others, we can't book anyone's travel. And so there are some parameters we're going to put into place that I worked through with Karen around, okay, here are the issues we're facing, how might we overcome those? And so Karen's going to present kind of a policy, like structure, so you know what the policy is, what you need to submit, as well as some timeline expectations of when you need to respond. Karen needs to now become like a Sid, Patty, or Darren in your email inbox. If she sends you an email, you should probably read it. All right, so that's kind of where Karen is being raised up to at this point.
Where's the financial?
We'll work on it.
So in other words, what Jennifer's saying is, we're in trouble. Deborah passed the buck to her. She passed the buck to me, and now I'm passing the buck to you. So we're going to talk about out-of-state travel approval procedures. I'm sure in later times, I know we've done travel just a few months ago, but it was a very dense, broad thing. So it is response to the fact that we've had to have some memos written, our OOPS memos, and as Jennifer said, a lot of times timelines have had to really, and which makes it really difficult, as you know. We're going for a no memo zone. So,
The theme this month.
so as you all know, there is a state travel policy saying that anybody who travels on a state dime, whether in-state or in-state overnight or out of state, whether you're an employee or traveling on behalf of the state, you have to have approval. Also, this is the general state rule. As an agency, we can make even more strict rules, and as a department, we can make rules about what we need to do, our policies and procedures. So keep this in mind anytime you're traveling. So, as Jennifer said, we created a new kind of cheat sheet for you to know what to do, and it looks like that. And it is, as Jennifer said, in the folder. So what we're going to do today is kind of go over what this sheet says and remind you what needs to be done when you're initiating travel approval. So, Jennifer, chapter 1, verse 1.
Oh my gosh, she's like, I can't wait.
We are going to say, as a department, that 60 days before traveling is the ideal time to submit your travel paperwork. If you want to do it even farther out than that, that's great too. I've been given the edict. Jennifer's asked that I process travel as it comes in, which is generally what I try and do anyway. Sometimes if there was a whole bunch at one time, I try to do it chronologically, and that may still happen if there's a bunch at one time, but generally I try and improve it as soon as I have everything needed. And so hopefully with it, that gives plenty of time to find other documents or give it time to go through. Our agency policy is to do it within 30 days. You need to at least 30 days. If it's within 30 days, there has to be a really good reason. And sometimes there are good reasons. A lot of times if you're going to, at the invitation of a third party, sometimes, as we all know, they don't send you the information needed. So especially if it's a smaller group who's not used to having groups come in, they don't really realize what you're going to need. So there are good reasons, but ideally, within 30 days. And within that 30 days, there is a space on the form where you fill in why it is. And then if it's close to departure, it better be a really good emergency. And it is really difficult to do. As you know, we have a couple of rounds of paperwork and ESS, and getting that through in a day or two is just almost impossible. It has been done, but it is really difficult. So here is what you need to initiate an out-of-state travel request. The first thing is the travel planning worksheet, or what the state calls an FI5. What the first page looks like. All you need to do on this first page is fill out your name, the name of the conference, and the dates you want to travel, and I'll fill out all the rest. If there's anyone going with you, make sure that their name is on there too, even if it's not someone in our department. Agency requests that anybody traveling to the conference is on the same paperwork. There are a couple of exceptions, like the SCAS group. But it's good to know everybody who's going. Also, other part of this 4-page form that you need to fill out are the questions that I call the blah blah questions, where it answers how this travel plan, how it ties into your role, and a few other things, why you really need to go. Anything else on the form you don't need to fill out.
This is both in-state and out-of-state.
This is just out of
We're
state.
just doing out of state this morning, so. This is like your conferences when you travel out.
That reminds me, I was gonna say, I think this is still your thing. This directors before Jennifer have made this, I don't know if it's agency or department, that as a specialist, you're allowed to choose one conference a year to go to that's your own professional development, that's supporting the work you do in your program. Anything else will have to be by special or Jennifer or ask you to go to. So you get one that's your choice, and then the rest you kind of have.
Your choice has to be approved by superintendency, so we get those at the beginning of the year and you've been approved if it's on that sheet. If something comes up later, it then has to go through the approval process. That's why when you do your budgets, it's kind of our way of, we build a different spreadsheet for that.
So that is all you need to fill out on this W. 5. And then the next thing you need to have is your registration documentation. So, you don't need to pay for your registration. You can just go ahead and register like CCSSO. I'll send an invitation, please register, and I'll send you travel documents. If there is a cost to register, generally you have to have the travel all the way through ESS, and then I can help pay that registration. So you should never really be paying registration out of your own pocket. If you choose to, that's okay. But ideally, that for you. Also, you need to have a conference hotel information. Conferences, 99% of the time, that organization has arranged for a special group block with a price, and you need to stay at the conference hotel. If there is not a conference hotel, then you need to travel. With that, you'll need to send your hotel reservation confirmation. So it is up to you as a specialist to reserve the hotel, or staff can do that. Most of the time, you have to leave your credit card. The only way you wouldn't want odd chance that they're going to charge the whole thing. That's happened a couple times. Normally, they'll just take your credit. In that case, you just need to show documentation saying they're going to charge the whole thing when I do it. And then, otherwise, if you do cancel, then. And then the agenda should show the beginning and ending dates and times, and if there are meals provided. Sometimes the schedule type agenda is not available sometimes. If you have something showing it's going to start January 1st and end January 1st, that will usually work. Some of these, there are little asterisks, and if on a conference website, is perfectly okay. Conference website, or just let me know it's on the conference website. I can usually, and I can just find the things that I need. The hotel reservation, for sure, you would need to send.
Just want to have them process. So this is what's required for your first push for going on a trip. They're not just one thing, not two. It's a number of things. And if she doesn't get one of these things, then we can't process your travel or anybody else that's linked to your travel. So I want to just give you a moment to talk with your partner about what are the things you need to do. So for example, hotel confirmation. I have to call and book a hotel, and I have to give that confirmation to Karen via email, right? So that's one thing I have to do. Like in your kind of partnerships, what's another thing you have to do until you, and keep going back and forth until you get through all of the things you have to do for the initial iteration. Because it's not just one thing. It's not just the FI5, and it's not just the hotel confirmation, but there's multiple pieces, and any one of these pieces that doesn't get turned in hold up your travel, right? So question over here, Kathy.
FI5, if there are 3 people going, you only need 1, or you need 3?
You can do one FI5.
Up to 40, there's a space on the FI5. There are space for, well, it doesn't show very clearly in here. There, you can put 4 names, and then it shows the space for 4 employee members. Anything above 4 people, we have to have a memo signed by Superintendent, Deputy Superintendent Norman, Patty, saying that it's okay for more than 5 people to travel. But up to 4 people, just 1 form.
What about the UPL, is on that other side?
You just like say for Jeannie, put your name in and then how it connects to yours, and everybody fills in that box. So generally, like I think Jolie and I went to one, and Sid had done it too, where like she would fill it in for her, and then she filled in all the questions for all of us, and then we just went in and filled in the one that was specific to like our UPM section. So if you're traveling with a group, somebody else on that responsibility, thanks to Sid, she did that for us, and then we just filled in our UPM goal connections because the strategic plan should be the same connection. A lot of the questions are the same across staff members. It's that UPM connection that will be your unique piece. Other questions?
Yeah, what do you prefer in terms of the easiest way to get the information? Like I try to put my name and the city in the subject heading so you can sort it that way. Is there some ideal, like, here's my hotel registration, here's my agenda, here's my, or
Just
you manage,
electronically,
right?
however you title it is great.
Oh, good. I usually just like, as the hotel confirmation comes, I send that one, and then here's the conference agenda. Mine are multiple emails, I'm sorry.
We're not alone. And that's fine.
As the park comes down, you know? Okay, go ahead and just kind of turn and talk until you've made it through the different things that might be required. And then there's some optional stuff that may also be required that Karen will get into, but this is kind of the core pieces. You need an agenda, a hotel, and the FI50A, and potentially registration, if it's free. If not, then that will come later. Okay, so go ahead and talk about what you need just so we are clear, so we already know where to travel.
I have to go back and meet. Nice cover.
I'm sure you'll miss this.
Well, and that's not, so that's not.
Not by my choice.
I don't think anybody is talking about this anymore, so let's go on. So does anybody have questions about these basic things that you need? All right, there are a few optional documents that may need to be submitted to, and these are generally if you are invited by a third party. So if you are invited by a third party to come to something, you'll need to include the invitation, and that needs to list what they are providing. So if they're gonna pay your airfare and lodging and everything, it needs to say that. If they're gonna pay only your airfare and airport transportation, it needs to say that. It needs to list specifically what they're gonna pay for so that we can encumber money from USBE. Also, if they are providing a flight for you, you need to book those flights through them. And I know this is kind of risky because this trip has not been approved. And if somebody books a flight for you, it's probably, it's canceled, yeah. So you may want to just chat with your supervisor or Jennifer and say, I have this opportunity. And I know most of you do anyways, just kind of let Jennifer or your supervisor know, hey, I've been invited to go here by these people. Is it okay if I move forward with that? And so we need a flight itinerary. If USBE is paying for the flight, then it will not be booked until their trip has been. Not book your own flights. Anything that you pay for will not be reimbursed. Yeah, people have lost money because that is the one thing that state travel will generally not reimburse for you. Even flights need to be arranged through state travel or by the third party. And then, purchasing codes. If you're going on your one trip, this is my one professional development opportunity that was pre-approved. Generally, that goes to administrative funds. But if you're going for a special program that's part of a program that you're a part of,
It works.
It worked, but it sounded redundant. Then you need to use those cost codes, and your support staff or accounting can supply you with that. And that will be changed in ESS so that after you get back from the trip, the travel will be part of the cost of that specific program. Any questions on these? Oh, so excited to be here. All right. So here is Jennifer chapter 1 verse 2. Karen, the traveling specialist, will notify you if there is a missing document. And this may not be the day that you send me stuff. It could be a day or two after, but when I start working on it and getting things put together, I will contact you and let you know of anything that is missing. There's chapter 2. If you don't reply within 48 hours, business hours, then it may put your travel in jeopardy. So either
And SID level. Right? SID level right there, like the response rate matters so that we can, especially if you did a 30-day, getting you a reasonable seat on a plane starts to become questionable, and you end up with a flight that needs to stop in 3 places to get you where you're going rather than the nonstop that you probably wanted. This benefits you in the long run, but it also reduces the urgency on Shauna and Diane and Karen to get your work done because we didn't think about all the stuff that's required as part of that work. So Karen will do her usual visits. She'll come by and be like, hey, do you have this? And if you're not around, she'll also drop you an email, even if she saw you face to face, so that it's documented that she has given you feedback on what she needs from you, so that after the 48 hours, if it has not been responded to, then so Karen and I might have conversations, say, yep, go ahead and cancel it. I have some staff that are less receptive to Karen's requests than others, and so at some point, we need to realize Karen's just trying to do her job, and your job is to get her what she needs. And it's not that hard, and if it is that hard, talk to Karen, she'd be happy to help you figure it out. Alan?
I was just gonna say, I've had instances where the place that I'm going will not send me the document, they don't send agendas or whatever sometimes. I assume that if we just talk to you, we know what's
The
happening.
response can be, I don't have that yet.
Okay.
And sometimes we put that on the form, the FFI, saying the agenda is not available. This is as much. Sometimes we'll make it through. It depends on some of the people along with our wanting.
Jeannie?
I've had that before with a smaller group, and they've made one up for me that's just kind of gives
Just
the
get
bare
one and say, can
bones.
you give me something?
They will. I just tell them it's a requirement I have to have, and they'll put it together. It's
Like that.
really not that.
Generally, they'll give you something, and the big thing they're looking for is, are there meals paid or not, which meals are covered, and then what kind of the start and end times of the day. I mean, that's the big meat of what you're looking for, to kind of help with, when can I get your flight out? I mean, that agenda, if you're done middle of the day, you don't need the 8 o'clock flight home, you could have taken the 4, and so knowing those things helps to kind of plan your trip better.
Speaking of booking your flights as much as you want to stay in DC for 3 extra days, flights will be booked according to what the agenda says. So if the agenda shows that it ends at 4, you're gonna hopefully be on a plane. There are occasions where something happens the last evening, there may be a gala or a dinner or something that you need to stay until 7 or 8, and there's just not a flight out. That's not a red eye, and that you can go back the next morning. You want to come back the next morning, not. Choose to stay longer on your own time. You can do that. You're responsible for your own hotel, your own, and if there is a difference in flight, in the fare of the airfare, then you are responsible to
So
pay.
if it's cheaper, you get more money?
You wish.
I wish. Robert wishes, because he's the master of staying later, but he also is a master of flying cheap, or traveling cheap. Okay, so, in the past, I've come to you and said, hey, I'm missing this, and I still might do that, because I'm just nice. But I will be sending out an email showing all the different things. I don't know why my circle's cut off, and I'll mark the different things that are missing. They also did not land where they meant to land. Anyway, hopefully it will actually mark the things that are missing. And this is when that 48 business hours start. I'm not gonna do it Friday at 5 o'clock saying you have 48 hours. Anyway, are there any questions?
We just want to say that we think this paper is really helpful, but we're wondering if there's something like this that exists for when we submit for expense reports for out-of-state travel.
There are some instructive documents that are available in SharePoint under travel. They're ESS instructions. And in later trainings, we'll try to do that. But no, last time we did travel, it was all one big chunk. I made smaller chunks are better. So that's something we can do. But there are documents in SharePoint that show you how to use ESS. And the iteration is created.
I'm setting up a link at least in the meantime, so yeah, support.
Okay.
Other, Jeannie?
Sorry, I had one trip where my refund was, or my reimbursement was $58.10 or something. still made me get reimbursed for that. So you don't have a choice of whether you get reimbursed. So it doesn't matter how much it is, you still have to get it. So don't think you could just say, I really wanted to just skip it. It wasn't worth $58 to me, but they said I had to.
Yeah,
That-
Indian says they do by the end of the year, just like everything else in the financial world, they want to close that trip. And you do that by submitting your reimbursement. If you don't have a reimbursement, there's a little button saying it's paid by third party or something. You just have to finish the trip somehow. Right, any other questions?
Us being thoughtful about our travel plans makes Karen look good, because right now it's making Karen look bad, and it's not Karen's fault. All right, so be thoughtful about Karen, if nothing else, that's what this conversation was meant to be.
Priority.
What would Karen do?
We love you, Karen. About Karen, okay? T-I-K. All right.
Karen.
I don't know about you all, but I just need a little visual reminder, and so you'll have it in staff folder, you can print it out, whatever works for your staff. All right, so supplemental standards, just moving on, and this is just for those of you with core standards, so I apologize, not for everyone, but we had the discussion around these kind of 3 levels of courses, and those of you that have been in those discussions with me. The middle column, the applied or advanced courses, and I put the document that I have taken all of the cactus codes from Kristen and put them into which category they fall into. Anything in the middle needs standards. We have state code that requires standards for all for all courses, not just the core courses. We didn't really realize this for the last 20 years. But as things came up, we realized. So all of these things, if I'm secondary at ELA, and these don't have standards right now, I am responsible for creating standards. Now, if you look and say, I'm secondary at ELA, that's a lot of courses to make standards for. The urgency in the document, and I can load that in as well, is really around which courses are most heavily used to kind of start our conversation, or what is the field requesting.
Well, this is awesome.
So let's say literary magazine is probably not a very highly populated course, whereas probably college prep or even world languages, those all require standards now. So I will meet with the content specialists that have this requirement, but I wanted to give you a heads up now that we will be building. The proposal to the board is we'll bring courses in March and November of each year, so we'll bring a big pile of them to try and inundate rather than one course at a time. So CTE does this. They brought 100 courses last month. It took less than 5 minutes to go through committee. We would love to be less than 5 minutes to go through anything on a standards document. So the more we put together, the less likely they'll dig into specific standards. Ricky?
I'm just saying I quit.
All right, I'll take a resignation later.
Thanks, all right then.
Ricky has 30 of these, so that's his need for quitting. There's no 30 in a year. It's not anything like that. It's just saying, what are your top courses? Let's work on those and take up those. The goal is that you would just get a group together, use your standards to build. Jody did this. It didn't take that long for yoga.
So yoga we did in one day, like a full day. But they also brought stuff with them, so it's not like we like started from scratch because they all brought like their stuff.
They've been teaching.
They were doing it, and then they worked together, and there was like 6 of them, and they did it in a day. Strength and conditioning. Sorry, anyone who is like a great athlete. They needed a lot more prompting, and they took like 2 weeks.
Hey, this is a good time if you're doing this to have you run the counts of those courses, because if you had 3 people take a course last year, maybe you should retire the course.
This is time to retire. It's time to clean up your courses. Like, we have things on the books for a long time that aren't even used necessarily. So this is an opportunity to lighten your load in some way. Why we make it a little heavier.
It's
So,
just the middle column you said?
yeah, so this is just secondary, like high school credit only is all we're gonna worry about. So those, I'll pull in the content specialists, we'll go through details, but I wanted to give you a heads up.
All high school credit or
Yes.
high school content, graduation credit?
All high school, all credits in high school, any course needs standards. So like the elective courses, the teachers are sending in what their standards are for those to get the course approved. So we're really just worried about this column because the first column generally has core standards already attached that it's being required around. So like when I look at English 9, 10, AP Lit has standards. We don't need to worry about that column, it's just the middle column. And if I have your courses in the wrong place, Kristen can help us with that. But those were tried to make it make sense. So for example, Melissa doesn't need to worry about these courses. That's up to the LEA because they're elective specific courses, and LEAs have to be the electives. It's just a applied foundations or applied advanced courses.
Okay, I'm just going for clarification. I think you just clarified. So I get what's on the far left.
Yep.
What's in the middle is anything that can count for math credit, but it's not or whatever credit. It definitely counts for credit for that content area.
Yep.
And so, and I will actually say we do have standards for our AAF math courses.
Yeah.
In math we have all, but, and what we did is we put committees together
And it's very similar to what you're saying, and it took more than a day, but that might be a mapping, but it was also very short. It was just, and it looks very much like the old standard setup, but then I'm making sure too that what's on the far side is things that would be taken in that content area, but don't count for credit specific for graduation for that content area,
This
right?
is the reason that really they're required course credit options for graduation. Or yes, they're required credits elective, but they're not core credit for that area. So that's kind of the distinguishing part of when you need standards and when we're leading up to the LEA to have teacher created standards. Kathy?
So if in Cactus, because our standards are not course specific, period, but if in Cactus there is a description of the course standards that are linked to that particular course, is that good?
That's
even?
sufficient. Yep. So when you're saying, give me an example.
Okay, so social ballroom dance, dance one standards.
Fine to those, that's fine. As long as they have a core standard or a set of standards, in this case, you're saying that dance standards are the standards, that's fine. They just can't not have standards attached to them, which as we dug into this, that wasn't the intent when this came along, but as we dug into the code, it is required that we have standards for everything. And so as we kind of realized that, it was very easy to say to the board, we kind of have to, and they were great with it. They went with the whole proposal, and the proposal was worked on with multiple staff members, so what we talked about is what happened in terms of this compendium, prioritization around how many kids are in a course, LEA request, industry request. There's one other area, I can't remember what it is.
So then one follow-up question, anything that we want to do over and above that, say we want to get more specific with some access information or whatever, can we just do that?
Yes.
Thank you.
So far.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will there be, okay, so when you look at course standards, right, they all have a very similar cover, they all have like similar front pages. Will these middle column courses supplemental, will they also have some kind of standard?
Like presentation, yeah. We'll work with Lee, because all of them will have
Like a
different-
format,
Yeah.
so that like whatever the
So
work
we
that
start
was
with strands of
done.
standards.
Yeah, yeah, so the work that was done then will be put into whatever that is.
Yeah, and so
Okay.
when we submit to the board, it'll be in that format.
Thank you.
All right, so I will meet with staff.
Timeline one more time?
There's no timeline, so we're just gonna work, right? We're just gonna show progress towards the outcome.
I heard March earlier, so I was kind of like,
March is if you, for the first series, if any of you are ready, or you needed to update, or like, we'll take the yoga and strength and conditioning, because they do need to get approved by the board. We're just hoping to have enough that they don't stare at them too long, right? Like, if there's one set of standards, they're gonna get into the nitty gritty, versus if there's 20, they'll just kind of like CTE, let it pass, and not dig into all of them. There will be some classes they're digging into, I'm not gonna lie, but the vast majority should go through pretty seamlessly.
So Jody just informed me that all of the ones that have always existed also need to go through in March.
So your AF that you have, if they're the ones you want to stay, need to go through.
Okay.
All right. Policy, if you'll open it, I downloaded into the Google folder the policy for work schedule. As we head into the new year, I just thought this might be the best one to review from a perspective of making sure we know what's allowed and not allowable. I'm gonna give you just a few minutes to read through it. And then you're gonna pick two things that kind of either were good reminders or something that might be surprising to you. All right, find a buddy, share one or two things that you learned or something that surprised you, and then I'm gonna give you a quick quiz. I'm gonna ask you a few questions to make sure we're clear, and then give a little clarity of my expectations related to this role. Go.
What?
I was wondering what that.
Anything surprising? Anything surprising?
It doesn't make sense to me.
No.
Yeah, to compensate for the time of getting lunch.
Back in 10? All right, quiz time. Someone on the humanities team, what is the typical work day? From what time to what time?
8 to 5.
What is the extended workday, digital teaching and learning?
7 to 6.
Nice. When do you get to work in the extended workday?
Approved upon by your supervisor.
When approved by your supervisor, okay? So the expectation is you're here from 8 to 5 or somewhere in that span, right? Your breaks, are they compensated or uncompensated for the 15 minutes? Compensated, so you don't take that out of your time card. So when you take 2 15-minute breaks during the day, they're not taken out of your time, right? They're compensated. Lunch, though, is compensated. So lunchtime, you actually do take it out of your workday, right? So if you take a 30-minute lunch, that comes off. Are you required to take a lunch?
No, not unless.
No, you're not required to take a lunch. But what is the kind of caveat to that?
Supervisor can require.
Supervisor could. I'm not going to require you to take a lunch. I'm a bad model of this, as I can't require you to take a lunch. I hardly ever take a lunch. It's not who I am. It makes me sleepy. I don't have time for nap time, so I can't take a nap, right? The
Well, you
lunch
have 15
doesn't-
minutes.
I can take a 15 minute. Which I'm
There
very
you
good at
go.
15 minutes. I need the George Christie at the desk for that, though.
I like a George Costanza desk.
I know
Can we
somebody
work?
that
I'm
really
seriously thought about, we need a few of these. But yeah.
Costanza. He's so funny. We have standing desks. It's gonna be great to have like reclining
Quiet
desks.
room. We got a quiet room. We just need pillows.
Can we make the quiet room a hammock room?
Really fit that. It is the quiet room. It could be nap room as well, nap time, quiet time. Questions about the policy. So my expectation is 8 to 5 unless you worked with me or your supervisor to work 7, to come in at 7 or to stay later. Some of you have, like Audra, for example, has like after school drivers ed related things. That's where she works with her supervisor, say, hey, I have, 3 times a month these meetings that are late because that's part of the job. And thinking about compensating for that, whether that means I leave early on Friday or I come in later in the Wednesday because I have a Wednesday 6 to 8 training or whatever. Those are the things you work out with your supervisor, okay? But the general expectation is 8 to 5 unless you work out something different, okay? And this is for everyone. Other clarifications, Alan?
I understand that lunch break is supposed to take place between 11 and 2. Is that still the case?
It's not in the policy, so I would guess not. There's nothing in there that says what time, you just have to take it sometime. So if you come in early and you wanna have yours at 10:30, check it at 10:30.
Rush.
I mean, maybe it's a second breakfast in that case, but. Right?
What about when they have a lunch and learn kind of thing? How does that relate to the time?
For the learning part, I think you can count it. I would still probably take lunchtime as lunch, just because the policy says they can't compensate you for lunch. But I could ask clarification on that one, because I feel like if they're trying to make you work through lunch, that it should be counted as lunch. So let me see clarification to make sure if you can or can't count it. Because I'm kind of talking myself out of you not claiming it as work time.
I have heard by an unmentioned source that if we have an EAC activity that goes over the lunch hour, you still can take a lunch break. Is that true?
I don't know. These are things that I will seek clarification and find out. It'd be good for all of us to know. Jump
As
in.
our EAC person, so no is the word from superintendency. So if you're going to, so it's been said by superintendency that you can go to an EAC activity for the duration of that activity. They are providing that for the agency, obviously barring anything you have scheduled, but you can't do that and then also take your hour lunch. It's like have like a 3 hour.
Okay.
So yeah, they had the
Hours.
hours.
I think his question is, so I go to EAC.
Let's do more
Is it work time or is it considered off time?
It is not considered off time. It's part of your day because of the work.
I know this. I could have made so many more hours in my life.
Yeah,
Okay,
they don't
makes
make you
sense.
count that against your work day.
Perfect. Okay.
That is up to 2 hours.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so you can claim EAC. This is to encourage your participation, like in yard games. We have lovely time. But I did not count it as part of my workday, and now I wish I would have even made it even better. David.
And not so much a question, but confusion.
Yes.
So So it says you don't have to take a lunch period, a lunch, whatever it is. You don't have to take a lunch. But if you don't take a lunch, that doesn't shorten your workday.
Yeah, it's kind of contrary to itself, isn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
So if you choose not to take a lunch and you still work 8 hours beyond that lunch that you didn't take, then you put in 8.5 hours?
That's how I would perceive that. Because what it should be saying, you're working, right? And you chose not to take a lunch. It's not punishing you for not taking that lunch. Although the agency would prefer lunch, and brain science would tell you to eat lunch. I do eat snacks, so don't worry. But it's not required for you to take a break, and I think that's been misconstrued each time we visit this policy, because it's not the first time. I've always said, like, well, I can't claim it, but I can. And so if you're looking at it, the intent is that you don't leave outside that 8 to 5, right? So if you worked your 8 hours and you're done at 4, then you worked your 8 hours, you're done at 4, right? Because my 15-minute breaks don't count. I can take those, which I don't know how many of you take them, but that is an area of growth I could do. Because breaks are good for you, even if like 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there, they just add up, right? It doesn't have to be concentrated, so. All right. And I can take clarification one more time on David. My impression of the way it reads is I don't have to take a lunch, but then it tells me I can't leave early for not taking that lunch, which seems like a circle of.
I wonder if that's meaning like that you can't then leave before 3:30.
That's what I'm thinking.
That's what I think is what that,
That's
that's how I've interpreted it.
That's how I would take it as well.
Not that I ever have that going on,
8
but.
to 5 is 9 hours.
Yeah.
If you take a half-hour lunch, do you still stay till 5?
Right.
And that's an 8.5 hour day.
Take no lunch, you still stay till 5.
Well, and you can't, I mean, even if you worked 8.5 hours with your 30-minute lunch, you're still done at 4:30. Like, you're not working 8 to 5 because your breaks are compensated, which is how I always got to the 9 hours, but now that I'm reading that, that's not true. So just kind of, I always revisit these and go, like, it's within the hours of 8 to 5, so I can work 8:30 to 4:30. If I don't take a lunch, I can work 8:30 to 5. If I want a lunch, I can work 8 to 4, 8 to 4:30. There's some flexibility in there, but ultimately, we should be coming in during that 8 to 5. That's where most of our customers, ultimately, work 8 hours and call it good, my friends. Okay. All right, but I do want to be clear, we're not working on Saturdays, we're not working from home, unless that's been approved. It is here in the office from 8 to 5, or out in the field as those of you that kind of have positions out visiting schools or whatever, when you got your Title III visits and such. Okay? All
Can I
right.
ask one more question, Jen?
Yeah.
So from an approval standpoint, I think it's a T&L procedure that if we are working over 9 hours, we're like including a reason on our time card. That is T&L what?
Generally under 10 is what.
Oh, okay. Does that constitute approval for working outside of hours if we're noting that? Or are we looking for pre-approval of circumstances?
I think I would talk to your supervisor. If it's like I had to work 10 hours, that may have even still occurred from 7 to 5, just given that was the work day. I, as a supervisor, would not want you bothering me with that request. Just do your job. It's more when we get worried that you're doing 10 hours every day and not able to get your job done is when I'd be more concerned. When you're doing 10 hours or more, you just double click on the time, type in your message, and I, as a supervisor, look at that and go, oh, they had a conference, or they had this and this meeting, or Audra had this after-school activity, whatever it might be, it's just clear what it was. Because you all have those days where you, like Travis went to Emory last week, drove to Emory, spent a day in Emory, drove home from Emory, like that ends up always being more than 10. But I approved the travel, so he doesn't need to ask again. Jeannie?
Sorry, I'll make this very quick. I had been told earlier that support staff had to be 8 to 5 or in those, that the 7 to 6 didn't apply because that had to be physically here during the times that LEAs.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yep. And again, it'd be a supervisory decision, but in general, our support staff should be here during the core hours of the day, which is 8 to 5. All right, we're gonna move on. I just feel like we can keep bringing back these policies just to kind of clarify. All right, do you have an article in front of you? And if not, let me know. I have more copies. All right, we're gonna break this apart into a few pieces. And this is really the intention of a little professional learning discussion for us staff. I'm gonna have you read the first page, the second page, and then you're gonna stop at where it says, can I have your attention, please? Okay, and I'll give you some discussion prompts after you read the first, second, and just the top paragraph of the third page. Question about the first task? It's a little reading. All right.
Okay, Jennifer, did you think we're reading from the first to that?
Yeah, just that little paragraph at the top. Stop it where it says.
Just before, can I have your attention, please?
Stop there, yeah. Can you see that? Right, so I'm gonna give you two kind of discussion questions to discuss, and this is whether you present at staff meeting, legislatures coming up next month, whether you're presenting on the Hill, or maybe as you design for professional learning. What implications may this kind of initial look into this attention piece have for your presentations? And then talk about that 10-minute rule. What is about the brain and the 10 minutes that we might want to consider in our professional learning or presentations? So go ahead and talk about those two questions, and then we'll come back together as a group.
You should never have.
The 7 minutes that we do for that talk. 1 minute turn. Take the first line. Space. Frequently people. You know, like, helps the emphasis. Then it has to be this 30-minute presentation. But it's just never I would tell you.
That's how.
That's how well, I mean, I'm online school.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like switching the types of parts of your brain, and I don't know from a student's perspective, or like I just but sometimes or just focus on something. Subject to brain. And like I also
Yeah, they couldn't tell you what you talked about. They say,
I guess like I wonder if like everyone kind of or if that's like
Coming back in 10? Oh, the line, all right. Initial takeaways. Those conversation points that you had.
So, I think that 10 minutes in a medium interest is maybe even a little long. But I think it depends upon, and that was the parameter that was given. If the audience or the participants are highly motivated with a real need to know, I think you can go longer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like Karen's presentation today, there was a point where I was like, okay, we've been talking for a while. I wanted to give you an opportunity to process. And so I paused for a second, let you kind of talk to each other to bring you back in and allow you a little processing time, because it's a lot of finite detail that is not going to keep you highly engaged unless there was something really pressing you or you had some experience like, I need to know this and it's a dire strait. We might need more frequent check-ins when you're kind of giving information that has a lot of meaty details and a lot of really specificity in it. Whereas if I'm sitting and listening to Pedro Aguero, if any of you have heard him, I can listen to him for hours, but he does the stuff we're going to talk about here in a minute as part of his presentation skills. He doesn't just kind of go on, he gets the story, he gives you a moment of emotion, whatever it might take to kind of keep you going, but he can give you a 2-hour keynote and you're on the edge of your seat the entire time without any interaction, which is generally how we kind of deploy this 10-minute rule. Is I'll talk for 10 minutes and then give a 2-minute break. And the younger we are, the more frequent those breaks have to occur. So in kindergarten, it's more of a 5-to-1 kind of experience. But by adults, we can usually make it 10 minutes, as you kind of read in this article, before we start to say, I'm starting to disengage, and not because you're tired. It's just like you got to a saturation point in your brain that says, I need a moment to process this information if you really want me to retain the information. If you want to say I taught it, you can keep going. If you want me to learn it, I need a moment of stopping, right? And so as I was sitting through a curriculum director meeting last week, a couple weeks ago, Alan did a great job of this. He would stop, he would talk for a little bit, and then he would give them a task. and then bring them back and share out and continue kind of in this back and forth piece, which allowed for more full engagement. The participants would definitely have more conversation, and the likelihood that they retain some of that information is much more likely than had he just explained all of the elements in the 30 minutes he was afforded. And so this is just as we start to design for each other as well as our stakeholders, thinking about, you just gave some meaty information, and yes, time is critical, but if you don't give them time to process, that meat just becomes rotten really fast and it goes away from our brain unless you created some emotional response.
I expect there's probably some implicit and explicit bias kind of going on at the same time, right? And from an implicit perspective, like our brains probably kind of just lose focus after 10 minutes, but from an adult perspective, I suspect that there's also this moment after 10 minutes when it's like, oh, okay, now the email is like in my head, and so now I'm more likely to make this kind of value proposition of like, oh, if I spend a little bit of time here, then I can come back and refocus on whatever the presentation is. And so shifting kind of modalities of the presentation also is a moment when everyone comes back together and they're like, oh, we're changing, we have to do exactly what's going on.
Back, it's just that natural transition. So thinking about when Jeff comes next month, he's going to do a legislative kind of preview and enhance us and get us ready for it. A lot of you have legislation this session, and for those that we asked for versus the ones that are going to come to us that we don't even know exist yet. And so as those seem to be coming up daily at this point, like it's that time of year. We went and met on a bill last week, 4 of us, and it's 20th in line to be drafted. Like there's that many already kind of in the docket at this point, which is great that so many people got ahead of it. I do just want to take a side note. He's going to continue the Mean Girls theme. So if you haven't seen Mean Girls, you really want to join Jeff's presentation. I would take your next few weeks of like vacation and watch Mean Girls because you're going to get so much more out of Jeff's commentary. He said, so are you okay if I continue the theme? I was like, you continue. I'm going to warn the staff so that if you haven't seen the movie, you have to see the movie.
How many movies are there?
Well, there's at least, I thought they made a second.
I think they did make a second, but.
You just watched the first one. You just
I don't think they made a second, I think it's just the musical.
There's a Broadway musical,
Which I saw this year.
Oh, yeah.
Should we have that as a super?
Watching Girls. So I'm just giving you a little, Christmas cheer. It is a Christmas themed movie. There's some holiday singing in it, so you can enjoy it. As you're like, it's not appropriate to your taste. That's fine. Jeff's jokes are way funnier if you've seen the movie. So if we could go to, it says page 89 at the bottom. I think it's the next page you'll turn. So the guy that wrote this book, John Medina, Brain Rules. This has been out for like a decade. But I stole just a few excerpts from it, rather than anything read the whole thing, just to get us back into cognitive science as we're planning for presentations, whether they're on the Hill or in staff meeting or in any of the presentations that you give. The frequency of interaction is helpful. And so the next part is just how he chose to do his lecture design. He would do the 10-minute thing. The piece that I think is missing, we'll hit in just a second. But he got like lecture of the year. As a professor, the fact that he was thoughtful about his 50-minute lectures and when to kind of make sure that there was these moments of cognitive collection and grouping was probably why I still don't think a 50-minute lecture is powerful. I'm not gonna lie. So as you read this section, what I'd like to do is kind of read how he designed his lectures. It's just one example, and it just kind of takes you just a couple pages and that one over. And there's a little summary because brain science tells us we do better if there's kind of an opportunity for summary. In this case, I let the book summarize for you so you don't have to. But I do want to get you to this last article in there as well, called Chunk and Chew. And specifically this third paragraph is the part that I want to talk a little bit more about, around the 10-2 rule. So basically the general principle is for every 10 minutes of me talking, you need 2 minutes to process, whether that's written, verbal, just mental, cognitive thought, allowing you to consolidate the information you had and make connections to previous learning and such is an example. So I'm going to have you read the 2 pages on how he designed his lecture, and then the 2 pages on this kind of chunking idea. And what I'd like you to do is think about how you might be able to use this information in your next presentation, so that we continue to advance our practice. Brain science has been done in the last 20 years in this space, and we can get more out of our participants if we attend to the science of the brain and the limited capacity that it has. It's definitely an ever-growing, ever-adapting piece, but it also has its limitations. And we consider those limitations in our presentations and the learning from them will be more powerful than if we kind of lose sight of that and take on a 20-minute conversation instead. So I will be quiet while you read, because brain science would also say you cannot multitask. So go ahead. yet. If you'll move there and read just that third paragraph, would be sufficient for the evening. Okay, let me just give you a couple minutes to talk with your colleagues around that 10-2 rule specifically, but also you can kind of connect it back to his lectures. There's a lot of overlap between this chunking that he's doing and the chunking they talk about the horizontal. But the next level is that opportunity to process that comes in the 10-2 rule. So go ahead and discuss the opportunities or kind of your thoughts around what you read, and then we'll come back together and think about it in our own work.
I know,
As far as having.
Just start the timer. Lecture, which
In my mind, it's like, obviously we have like Andy jumping on Pam's desk.
Alright, so given your readings, some is down, some of you, and some of it might be newer. How might we be able to employ this cognitive science in the work that we do, Stephen?
Carl was just talking about how it is world language or leadership meetings. Very often we think about doing those kinds of laying out thoughtfully. I sound a little bit like Lauren McCall, sorry. Lay out those 10 minutes of chunks, and you've got this overarching theme, whether it's effective world language instruction or science or whatever, but then you chunk it out, give them some time to work it through. And I think the cool thing there is to be really explicit about why you designed it that way, to kind of reiterate for people, this is why we did this, so they can go back and model that for, it doesn't work for us to say, now, I know I should be doing X, but I don't have time, or, you know.
Yeah, if you don't have time, they probably just know they're not getting as much output. So although you got through the content, their retention of that content is most likely greatly reduced.
So our work, this is awesome to be reminded of this, but it made me think of secondary schools on block schedules. So how many 10-minute blocks is too many? And how much time is ineffective in a block schedule because you can't learn one more new thing today. You gotta have some additional time to process.
Yeah, well, I was thinking like, okay, we can do so much new, and then we can spend some time reviewing, right, and extending rather than everything being new all the time.
But we know that those block schedules are not always or very often effectively used.
Well, I know a lot of you came back from Title III visits so dismayed, and Sid is hearing that, so her new thing to the field is quality instruction. Every time she talks, it's about quality instruction now, and she's like, you said in a board meeting and it just stuck, and I was like, we can't overcome all the barriers we have until quality instruction improves. And part of that quality is the frequency at which we allow children to participate in the learning activity. And even in our own settings, if we start modeling for our educators, just that trickle down effect of whoever we work with, you can only retain so much. And I get 2 minutes to consolidate and try and connect it to, I went to some training, they connected to an egg carton. Like, you first have to open the egg carton, and then you have to find the right egg to match this information to, so it can stay in the egg carton later. And so if I don't have those consolidation points and those abilities to make connections with my current understanding, it's unlikely to maintain an egg carton. It's gonna go find a different place and maybe just roll around for a while, rather than going in the egg carton that it connects with. So thinking through these as we start, when you're working with the curriculum objectives, for example, like Alan did, if we can be thoughtful about the frequency of which they can interact, they do much better now as a group in interaction anyway. But those opportunities are powerful for them, but also help them to process the information and hopefully retain it a little bit longer. Same in staff meetings, when you're presenting to staff, think about that 10-2 ratio. And depending on how rich and lively your content is, you might be able to go a little longer, but the brain physically can only do so much new information before it needs a moment to take that in. And that moment can be, write a little summary of what we just talked about, turn to your partner with the assigned conversation task. Not just leaving it open, because then it just seems like, oh, I talked for 10 minutes. Hurry and do something while I have to figure out what's next, but having some intentionality and meaningful interaction after that 10 minutes or so. Yeah.
Love poll everywhere for that.
Yeah, like great opportunities just to kind of take in. I could have, after the policy of you reading the policy, I could have done a little poll everywhere, right? Like there's different ways that we can engage to help retain that information. At this point, it's just frequency of how many times we visit that policy. That maybe it's starting to sink in. Okay, I'm going to transfer things over, but I really would love for you to be thoughtful about using this kind of 10-2 cognitive science in your work, whether that's presenting to your directors or doing a legislative presentation. You can't engage them in the same way of like them interacting, but we can kind of bring a story in at some point rather than continuing on with your presentation. Most of the time we don't have more than 15 minutes, so trying to make those stories quick and powerful is useful for re-engaging the legislators. Could you imagine sitting up there all day listening to people give you a presentation? Try and bring them some joy along the way.
As we transition, it's interesting that in Finland, there's 45 minutes of schoolwork, 15 minutes of recess, 45 minutes of schoolwork, and it's basically the same kind of math, not quite, but in terms of 10-2, right? So interesting.
And down in Finland, you would actually see anyone lecturing for 45 minutes. So thinking about, we need those brain breaks of not taking content in, but we also need the brain opportunity to allow that information to come in, and balancing those points. All right, Jeannie's gonna kind of do some work around the effective teaching standards. I hate to say this, Jeannie, but every meeting I go to, people say it's time for an update. Probably in the last 3 weeks, I've been hit up on 6 different meetings. So I think we're gonna have to maybe go that pathway. But let's frame it in your current pathway of what we currently have, knowing it should be kind of impacting and threading into our world. So I'll hand things over.
She knows to say that because that gives me a heart attack.
Don't worry, we'll make the new person do it.
When I started to work with these, I promised all the people out in the state that I was in charge of this now and there wouldn't be changes. Maybe, I think that there's enough turnover out there, hopefully nobody's still out there that I promised it to. So the whole purpose for talking with you about these, and I have 15 minutes and I'm not stopping for 2, but it is interactive the entire time, so there you have it, is to get your feelings about your knowledge on these. My team, you get to be quiet while you do these, because you guys are know-it-alls and already have it. I want to find out exactly how comfortable are you with these? How comfortable are you with this whole book? I don't care. We really don't care. There is a foldout that has the standards that are all put together, and they're currently dwindling in size because of how much they're being used, and according to what I'm being told by my boss, there may be some changes coming. I will tell you that the field part that I work with, they really like them. I feel like they're pretty comprehensive, but I know that also involves changing a lot of their work. So anyway, this is all about you. So I need to find out what, not that I don't care what you know, I'm not measuring or keeping track of what you know. I'm trying to figure out what it is that you need to learn for your purpose. You are about ready to go out and spend the most awesome summer. I'm just jealous out in the field working with the teachers out there. They are responsible to know these standards, period. I'm not going to even mention evaluation other than to do that. they have to know and be able to implement these standards. So that's why I care, and that's why, bless you, I need you to care about these. So as you are developing your work, that these are in the back of your mind the whole time, thinking about this is what the teachers need to know and understand. So here we go. How many standards are there? Here are your choices. Are there 8? Are there 10? Are there 64? Or are there 9?
64.
Head shakes or nods like.
I could give you nods on 2, actually. There are a total of 10, what we have referred to previously as standards. Now we would call them strands, right, in the change of our language. There are 10 standards. At the beginning, we had some freak out going out on the field. They're much more reserved now because we said, you know what, there's a total, actually, when you start to look at the indicators, of 64 things that you need to know and be able to do. So when we told them really it's 10, that was a good thing. All right, there are 3 main groups of standards. There's one group that has the first 3. There's another group that has the next 4, and then there's another group that has the next 3, and then maybe there's more. So I have a whole list here. You ready? 3 big pieces: instructional practice, relevant curriculum. Is one of them titled The Learner and Learning, cognitive rigor, professional responsibilities, A, B, and C, A, C, E, or none of the above.
B.
What are the odds of me leaving to go help Ryan?
Done, it is G. So they are divided into 3 pieces: the learner and learning, instructional practice, and professional responsibilities. 3 big pieces. Everything else fits underneath that. I'm gonna go faster than 15 minutes. Are you ready? All right. There are standards underneath those 3 big pieces. In learner and learning, what are the 3 standards underneath that big picture of learner and learning? Is it A, B, C, or D? D? Dun, 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 dun. All right, so those are the 3 big standards. There are lots of really great goodies underneath, but big picture is we want our teachers to know their learners. What do they need? What do they already have? How can we support them? This is where kind of our classroom management foundation can be. Don't know your kiddos. You've got a lot of work ahead of you. I had to start a year over 2 weeks in my 2nd year of teaching. I had a really difficult class, and they were all over the place. So I went to my principal and I said, I'm teaching, they're not learning. Can I start the year over? Can I have a whole week of not teaching? Start over, bless you. She said, sure. So we went back to the first week of school, the 3rd week of school, set it all up because I finally figured out I need to know what my kids need and how they react. So it really is the truth. All right. So under instructional practice, there are 4 standards that you can choose from. Are we looking at assessment or instructional practice, or excuse me, not assessment first, content knowledge, assessment, planning, and instructional. I have those backwards, don't I?
No, that's in the right order.
Is that in the right order? Okay, thank you. Or all of the above? All of the above. Those are the 4 big pieces. These are the 4 that your teachers are going to tell you that they care about. The very, very most. This is knowledge, content knowledge. This is understanding how you know whether they have their content knowledge. This is understanding as far as planning, everything that you do, that assessment you do, how is it affecting your planning? Not just I know where my kids are and they don't have this. What does that mean for your planning? I remember Superintendent Larry Shumway said, I don't care, you can tell me every single day that you taught.
You know what I mean? It's fine.
All I care about is if they learned.
Just doing what I'm told.
Right.
That's what when you hear it from your superintendent. That's kind of important.
Thank you for your help.
All right, and then the last group.
So you had a job to come over for Christmas or is it?
The newest growth. This one right here is where we're talking about, is the teacher self-reflective? This is one where they're thinking about, what are my goals? Where am I in my goals? And it's also collaboration. And it's not collaboration only with their team or their content level or anything like that. Who else in the building works with the children that they do? I'm still including secondary children. They're just big children. Leadership and collaboration is more collaboration. You're starting to look more at the bigger picture there. The professional and ethical behavior, that one's either you're in the HR office or you're not kind of thing, you know. There's not a whole lot of gray. There's a few things that can be, but mostly we're looking at what Travis would call harming students, right? I just gave the answer, all of the above. All right, so here are my questions for you. We're not going to go through all of them. This is the worst thing you can do in a slide deck is put a whole ton of information. Don't ever, 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 ever do this. But I'm just doing it because I know you're all awesome and wonderful and more just for my information. So this one's about me. So I am trying to find out basically where you are, and we won't go through every single one of these as far as 5 to 5 like I was thinking about, but you're going out and working with teachers, whether it's this big summer institute or it's every day. And this includes their leaders. We need to be providing coherence at our level. If we're not showing how all the work we're doing is coherent, it's one more thing. Now, some of you were here when there was a face-to-face with somebody that was very, very passionate about the teaching standards, and there was somebody that was very passionate about MTSS, and one was more important than the other, and so was the other one, and there isn't anything that we do that isn't more important than anything else. What we do needs to be coherent. So our educators that. We need to show our principals, show our district and charter leaders. We need to show our teachers that we're not all out there delivering different messages. This is foundational. They need to know this. This is part of law. This is part of rule. Our 277-530 is all about professional standards, including leadership standards, and now they've added counselor standards. We won't go there right now. So I was going to go through and say, where are you, where are you, where are you? If I'm wondering more about some professional learning for you. I can do a professional learning. I've gone around the state and done it forever. I can do it as quick and dirty as an hour, where we can dig in well enough that you feel like you know them. If you're interested, if you feel like you need it. So, do you want this offered as an option? That, hey, we're gonna have it this day. If you're interested, come see it. Do you want this to be, all right, today, if you wanna come, we're going to do the 3 big, we're going to do the learner and learning, or as part of one of our meetings. Is there one that you wanna do where we're going to talk about instructional practices, one on professional behavior? Is this something that we do all of it during one of our meetings? Or, last one's kind of like I don't care, I'll go with the flow. And I didn't put it up there, but E could be, shut up, we're busy, all right? I can take parting shots, it's all right. So I want you to think about A, B, C, and D. As this does not really interest me. My feelings won't be hurt. I've done principal certification and they've nailed me to the ground. That hurt me. I mean that jokingly, kind of. All right. Fist, it really doesn't matter. Whatever. Actually, more of a no. 2, 3 is, whatever. Go with the flow. 5 is, and I'm really thinking this is important. Anything in between, we're gonna.
I have a question.
Yes.
For A, does it mean that the professional development should be optional, or that integrating these standards should be optional?
Attending the PD.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you, I think that.
I don't think that it's optional at all.
No, I think Jennifer chapter 1, verse 3 would
I have
be.
become a book in the Bible.
Yes. Right on your own. You have the Queen Jennifer
That's
version. I think that would be, this is required because our teachers are required for this. That's why I'm wanting to know how much support you need in order to be doing it. Very good question, thank you.
I think it's super important. I'm just wondering about the PD, because I don't want for a second to say that this is not an important.
Right. So is it optional that you get some learning? If you feel comfortable with them, if you've been working with them and you're feeling comfortable, that's great. I don't want to spend time. Jennifer doesn't want to spend your time. But if you need it, then we need to know. All right. Okay, Jeannie's going to offer PD with this. It's optional. I'll come if I need to. I'll come if I don't. Fist to 5. I don't need this. There's no reason to have it. I think I might come. Yes.
That's kind of backwards.
That is kind of backwards.
So A says this should be optional, so does 5 mean, yes, this should be optional?
Yes. So it's 5 to 0. Yes, this should be optional. You know what? Let's skip A because we'll get to whether it should be optional or not. My bad. Skip A.
Jeannie?
Yes.
I just want to make sure, what I'm hearing you say is, if we don't care, fist, if we're really thinking that this should be a big deal, 5. And where are you in between there?
Except
Okay.
the way those are stated.
So don't really, the A, B, C, D, you just want to know right now, like, where are we? Okay.
So given you are expected to be training using effective teaching standards.
Right now.
I have never received training on how to use the effective teaching standards as my time in the agency. And to have an expectation of you just figure it out on your own, which is kind of where we've been. What Jeannie's offering is if you would like a little bit more training from how to interpret those. If you've read some of them are very vague and don't really give you a whole lot. Like there's one that says it's the inquiry and standards of practice or something. And anytime I ask them what it means, no one knows. And Dave was like, well, I know, but it'll take 30 minutes to explain it. It should never take 30 minutes to explain a standard, right? Like it should be like, oh, it's this, got it. But there are some pieces that might be helpful. The expectations, they're embedded into your summer training. If you don't know what they mean or how to use them effectively, that might be more of a lift for you, or Jeannie can provide some additional service. And then we can just determine, we can offer the opportunity, and for those of you that are willing and also that's the desire that you have, you can attend. And for those of you that are like, oh no, I've been doing these standards for years, I'm good, then that's your opportunity. But the evidence would be in your professional learning that it's weaved in, right? That you're highlighting those standards anytime we're working with teachers to say, okay, when you do this, you're hitting this standard in your practice. So hopefully that gives a little more clarification of kind of what our intent is. Jeannie came and said, hey, it's been a while since we've done anything. I've been here 5 years, and maybe I missed the staff meeting I was in, because you all know I was not consistent before I was director of attending staff meeting. But given that the expectations are kind of being raised in the slide around the effective teaching standards and evaluation and their professional learning, the opportunity that Jeannie is trying to afford you is to learn more about them so that it'll be easier to weave them into your work, ultimately. That helped give a little clarity? Okay, fist to 5.
So part
0
of
means
this,
I'm good, I don't need anything. I know them, I could be Jeannie right now teaching them. 5 means I really could use a lot more. 3 is a light touch would be nice, and then anywhere in between there. Does that work? Kathy, did I do the right order? I can tell she
And
hung up on us back
implementing
there.
doesn't necessarily mean that you have to say, this is 3A. I want you to know that part of it. You need to know 3A well enough that you are making sure that that is part of what they're learning.
I am great with putting a fist of 5, but I've heard 3 different orders of.
I just gave you a new one. Are you ready?
Listen to Jennifer.
I just
She-
want to. I just want to make sure my number reflects the one that matters.
Yes.
So 0 means we are like rock on, let's do it, and 5 means I don't care.
No, other way around.
That's the way I said it, but you just said it the opposite. It's like,
No, 0 means I'm good. I don't need anything. 5 means
I need a lot.
oh, okay.
So
Okay,
this
good.
is
That's
how-
the way I know.
thank you, Nate.
How much training we need on this?
Yeah, like 0
Oh,
means I
interesting.
already know everything. 5 means I need a lot of support, and anywhere in between is where you are in the.
Ready to vote.
I was trying to get too specific.
I'm just ready to vote. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Alright,
Thank
0, I got this, I'm a pro, I'm going to help you do the training, Jeannie, or somewhere in between.
And you do have to vote. This is not a
And
non-participatory.
5
Other than David, David,
is
you don't have to.
I need
so-
this.
I have given training. I think I can recite them.
Other waiting.
Fine.
Not at the state
Research
level,
team's not
but-
voting.
Perfect. Thank you, Fran.
Research says they don't have to vote.
Live life.
Research says that your votes are.
Yes.
Seems like, you mentioned MTSS, and now we're talking about badges, and then we got this going, so isn't there something in common with all 3 of these systems that ought to be pulled out?
Yes, and we're working on how we're going to do that for the whole agency.
It's really confusing to me. I mean, this is just like to say, hey, look, if this is what we're going by, let's go by this.
Let's have that discussion. I think Jennifer has this right now.
Okay, so given our time, I'm gonna be thoughtful about giving you enough action planning time. So what I would like just to give you as a task instead of us going through it is each team to go through and find whichever one you've been working on and this just enter a status check in the final column. So this is in the standards folder, in the staff meeting folder. So there's one that's the standards implementation work. In the final column, I just added status check. So you're either gonna type done, like this one's complete, it's ready for others to look at, or you're gonna tell me how many 30-minute work sessions you still need. So if you guys still need an hour, you'll put 2 more sessions or 3 more sessions if you need 90 minutes. So just one of you be responsible, go in and put something in. If you can get that done before our next staff meeting, then I'll know how much more time we need. I would really like to wrap this project up by the end of January so that we could do a peer review, call it good, and continue on down the path of standards without continuing the work on it in the staff meeting. Sound doable? So be responsible, fill in the chart, you can do it right now if you want and get it done. Why I take us to the next part. Shouldn't be too bad. I know last time, I think it was 4 and 5 that said they were done. Was that right? See? 4, look at that. Sarah's in there putting in done. Thank you.
We have one today.
Oh, we do. And that's what I wanna make sure we leave on time for. Okay, the last part that I have for you is the action planning time with either yourself, if you're doing your own goal and nobody else kind of fell into your space, or with the team that you kind of started working with a few times now. So this last part, I have a little template, really trying to get you to be intentional and thoughtful about your plans and achieving your goals. I have not seen, and it's probably just me being at the direct level, hasn't been an interaction, but I haven't seen any financial requests of we need this trainer to come in and do this work with us. And I'm kind of surprised I haven't seen any based on what your initial proposals were. So I just wanted to take some time today, knowing we are getting to the middle of the year and goals are generally due April, May. There's only 4 or 5 months left to improve yourselves in whatever professional learning intent that you had, and I wanted to give you time to kind of work a little bit further today. So in the document or in the folder, you've got a template that is expected that your team will submit by the 10th, so I can know how to support you as well as your supervisor. 1 second. So in here, it's just a really simple template. Pick your actions, what needs to happen, who's gonna do that for your team, and when that's going to occur by, okay? So your goal, go ahead and go to the top, and it can just be a generic title of what that is. Some of you have project management or professional learning design or whatever it might be. And then going through and putting in what's gonna be done by May 1st, because honestly, that's probably as late as our evaluations will probably go this year. That's generally when they're due, which leaves you a couple months still of the year, but it's done for evaluation time. So going through and marking down whatever actions need to be taken, as well as who's gonna be responsible for doing that. So if one person's gonna be responsible for orchestrating whatever needs to happen, that's great. If it's a couple people, fine. If it's the whole team is gonna do this, then you put all your team members in that, okay? And then the timeline of when you expect those to be done by. You'll have until the end of today to work on this, so you've got about 40 minutes to work together. If you don't remember your team, just go around and find different groups until you find the people you were with. And I know I had some singletons. Shonda, I think, a singleton. Nate was a singleton. Anybody else? Jessica, a singleton. Jane.
I got some new information on Friday and I might need to be a singleton.
Okay, you're welcome to be a singleton. You're welcome to be in a team as well. We had a pretty large group that might have some different breakouts within that group as well. Whatever needs to happen, I just don't want you to get to May and not have achieved your professional learning goal and not pass your evaluation. So trying to set you up for success by giving you some time to be thoughtful about it. Yeah.
Question. So I know the group that I'm on, it's kind of a big group, and we included some of the singletons just to see if we had some connections we could make. Do you want just the plan moving forward or the plan that we've...
Moving forward, from
Okay.
today forward, yeah, whatever needs to happen. Some, you may have already had some things in place, great, but what needs to happen from here forward?
Okay.
I like that question, thank you. Okay, work time. I'm gonna go help Robert with standards review committee.